Hey everybody, Attorney Walter Hnot, most viewed, clicked on, subscribe to Disability Attorney in America. I'm on the farm, so the internet might not be perfect, but just as a quick heads up, there was a big news release from the Social Security Administration, boopity boopity boop, specifically March 21st, 2025. It was a statement from Acting Commissioner Dudek about temporary restraining order. Basically, a judge made a decision. Many people are calling this an activist judge. It, to be fair, is definitely a Democrat-leaning judge with her decision, her writing that I've gone through. So it is that, obviously, as a comparative, when Trump comes up on a very Republican identity, judges that are more Democrat tend to go ahead and give more, what's happening. So the bottom line is this: he released, the commissioner of the SSA, the following statement. Today, the court issued clarifying guidance about the temporary restraining order, TRO, related to DOGE employees and DOGE activities at the Social Security Administration. Therefore, I am not shutting down the agency, the entire Social Security Administration. President Trump supports keeping Social Security offices open and getting the right check to the right person at the right time. SSA employees and their work will continue under the TRO going forward. Basically, this was immediate release by Mark Hinkle, the press officer. Why was it released? Well, there was a court order that basically said all the DOGE employees and their affiliates could no longer access the SSA computer systems. Now, that's going to be appealed, and I'm pretty sure they'll get access again. I'm pretty sure they will. But the bottom line is, what happened was Commissioner Dudek said, well, anybody's an affiliate of the DOGE employees, because the DOGE employees are part of DOGE that work inside the SSA. So definitely the tech people, the fraud waste departments, Office of Inspector General personnel, all of those people would. I mean, anybody could be essentially a Social Security affiliate of the DOGE team. So the judge came out with clarifying instructions because the commissioner said, I'll have to shut the whole system down. Well, Trump called the commissioner and said, up. Don't F this up for me. The people need to know that they're going to get their check on time when they're supposed to. And that's why Commissioner Dudek released a statement saying, okay, a little bit of a whoopsie. I should have never made them fearful. I should have never made them scared, yada, yada. Now, I want to talk about an underlying theme that has been going through the news, and it's been very, very prevalent over the past couple of months, okay? First and foremost, should we still have the Social Security Administration as it is? If we were to change the name of it, if we were to change the programs under it, what would it look like? And I want to talk to you about a general overview. Obviously, this is not what's happening, but this is what I think might happen in the future. Many of you want to throw up with hearing the idea that Social Security benefits might one day end. The boomers especially want to throw up when they hear that. They want to become very angry because they are reliant heavily on the retirement check. But the boomers also have to realize that because student loans are so out of control, people can't pay them back, the economy has been completely destroyed, and now people can't afford houses or food. The Social Security program is getting a lot of scrutiny because the younger people who can't afford to live in America, many of which are now looking at options to move out of America, are now saying, we don't want to, we can't afford to, why the hell do we have to pay for the elderly people? The elderly people are saying, well, we paid for the old people back in our time when we were younger, you should have to do the same. The counter argument from the younger people is very simple. You lived, the boomers, in the best time of America ever. And that's true, right? Post-World War II, that was the best time of America ever when it comes to financial potential gains. You didn't have to work nearly as much, and the money was worth a hell of a lot more, and things were a hell of a lot cheaper. So the reality is that when the boomers went through this transition, I know some boomers will argue, they'll be like, well, it wasn't me. That's true. It wasn't you. It was corporations. It was the federal government. It was the presidents. But the boomers were never really that aggressive when it comes to articulating their responses about essentially what they want to change in the government or becoming educated in politics. That was not a super priority. Joy, mega donation. I super appreciate that. Let me put a little heart on that. That's amazing. Thank you for having such a big heart and choosing to help those in need. Absolutely, absolutely. And I really appreciate it. Just so you guys know, the donations are mostly going to two things right now: setting up a desk that allows me to interview people at the spot where I normally do it. I'm on the farm right now, but the spot I normally do it, interviewing people, that's kind of the next spot. And then the other thing is basically Shadow surgery. Shadow has a surgery coming up, which is big. It's a full hip replacement. So I'm using some of the funds, obviously, to do that as well. We're going to have a whole big video series on that, because a dog that's under 35 pounds having a major surgery, hip replacement, is huge. And honestly, the medical community would probably do better to have that, so that people understand what actually is required for a dog to go through that. Because, he's my kid. So I have two chubby dogs. They're both my kids. So let's get into this real quick. What would happen if Social Security were to change? Now, I am not advocating in any way, fashion, or form that Social Security benefits become this in an immediate sense. But I do believe, as somebody who basically looks to the future, I know that retirement benefits won't be there for me like they are for people right now. I know that disability benefits will also be struggling, because they'll probably take the trust fund from the SSDI benefits and put it into the retirement benefit trust fund to make the retirement benefits last 1 year longer. I know that Social Security benefits for me are not going to be there in the future. And it's for a lot of reasons, but if I just give you like the bullet points on the hand, right? Number one, artificial intelligence. Number two, robot assistance. Number three, reduced amount of people working because of those other things doing things. Number four, competing nations that all do the same thing, requiring fewer people. Basically, instead of having each government for each country, right, they'll condense them all so that you have fewer people trying to govern, larger portions of land and countries and people. You'll have like continents being a country as opposed to countries within a continent. Ultimately, we just don't make enough people. It's weird, right? You would think, how does Social Security work? Well, Social Security is another name for the word farm. Social Security is a farm. It has farm animals. That's the working class, to pay for all or most of the stuff that basically happens with the Social Security Administration. And that's what it is. They're farming work product off of humans to pay for people that need assistance. They're basically subsidizing groups, the elderly and disabled, off of the people capable of working. That's what Social Security is. It's a social net, right? It's a social net. It's a progressive one. So the people who pay in, who make more, get way less than the people who are impoverished. It is a social, and we have to have it that way, because if we don't, then the people who are impoverished aren't going to get enough to be able to eat and survive. Although the middle class would argue against that, because they're like, hey, what the hell, where's my money? That's the counter argument. So I want to start the conversation. And I realize that this is not going to be a popular idea, but the conversation of it needs to be had. What does Social Security benefits as a system look like if it begins a transition where we no longer have it? I don't believe Social Security as a general idea is ever going away. It's just going to change. What I think is going to happen is the pay-to-play programs, like SSDI benefits, like retirement benefits, are going to transition. I think we're going to go from a program that we have right now and shift to a UBI, and basically, a situation where people have universal basic income. And then there will be a settlement situation where people who have already paid in get a settlement from the government who did the pay-to-pay programs. So for example, like retired people would get a settlement amount. Disabled people would get a settlement amount for what they had paid in and what they can get paid back. And essentially they would get a settlement, and then everybody in America would go on universal basic income. So universal basic income is basically like SSI benefits without the poverty restrictions. So everybody would essentially just go on to SSI benefits, although there would be no poverty restrictions. And then, of course, there would be a Medicare for everybody. Everybody would have a Medicare option with hospitals, etc. So the whole idea here is we would shift from pay-to-play programs like retirement, where you pay, you get your 40 quarters of coverage, or SSDI benefits, where you have to have enough quarters of coverage and enough of them have to be recent enough, to basically universal basic income. And then they would settle out the people who paid in, a legal settlement where they would pay them. And then basically they would just get UBI. They would have their settlement money to invest it however they see fit. And everybody would have Medicare. This would massively cut down on applications, because we would no longer be needing applications for this, all these different applications. Instead, what we would have is basically just application for eligibility as a citizen or whatever smaller naturalization programs they would have that would still be allowed to get access to it. That would be it. It wouldn't be tons and tons of this application, that application. UBI would massively reduce the amount of adjudication time needed for things like disability benefits. Now, a question I've been wondering about is if they had a change like this, would this increase or decrease the likelihood of people signing up for the military? Because America's got a problem, although Trump getting in obviously massively increased the amount of people signing up for the military because it's a pro-American government, as opposed to more of like a, I don't know how to describe it. If you can figure out, let me know how you would describe Biden's government. Like if you could put it in one sentence or one phrase, what would be compared to people signing up for the military? It was definitely not a pro-military, pro-government, pro-agenda of America being like the supreme nation of the world. It was definitely different. It was more of like an apologetic nation / giving resources away or spending emergency resources or giving them to countries at a reduced rate of what we should actually get. It was a very different style of approach. Some of the things were good. Some of the things were the most horrific betrayals I've ever seen on behalf of the United States nation on the White House. But now, to be fair, he was not fully aware of all the things that he was truly signing. Now the reports are coming out, and you can believe or not believe them. But, based off of his cognitive decline, you know what I mean? Guy was not fully aware of what was going on, just to be totally fair with the whole situation. So I think that if we had universal basic income, in my opinion, it might shut down or slow down or close out many people signing up for the military, because when people usually sign up for the military, there's a lot of reasons, but it's usually falling into a couple categories. A, they have family members who are in it and they want to follow the legacy. B, there's something in them that has something to prove and they want to prove it in the military. C, there have been a lot of things that they tried to do and they didn't work out and they thought, shit, you know what I'm going to do? Military. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the military. I'm going to sign up because then they're going to feed me, they're going to house me, they're going to clothe me, yada, yada, yada. Those are the main categories I see people sign up for the military. If you, for example, make sure everybody has enough, I don't think there will be as many people signing up for the military. Now, none of this can be done by executive order. No, it needs legislation, maybe even constitutional amendment to actually get something like that through. But I do believe 15 years down the line, maybe sooner than that, we will be seeing a transition away from retirement benefits, away from Social Security disability insurance benefits, into a universal basic income that basically will settle out those people and say, here's your money back, go invest it how you see fit. If you invested poorly, that's your own damn fault. Then you have to go ahead and just sit on universal basic income. That way you're covered as a base. Is this fair? Is it fair to say you have to go make your own investments? Now, the reality is if you give some of the money back to some of those people, they're going to blow it and ruin it and, invest it into things that are not going to help their future. Then you'll have a lot of people that will make in a regular middle honest return, right? And then you'll have people who invest it, who will make millions and millions and millions of dollars off of it. And, they'll show them in the spotlight and the news and the media left and right. Look what you can do with your, settlement agreement. Look at what you can do with your retirement benefit, yada, yada. They'll play that game. My point is with this video, not to go ahead and try to present. Yeah, I just saw the comments from Scarlett. Gucci bags for all. There was a bit of that when they did that whole, stimulus thing, like the super luxury stores. A lot of their items that were in the, $1,000 to $4,000 range were purchased at the super luxury stores. A lot of people were buying, a bracelet or this or a purse or that or whatever. So that is very true. That is a good point. I think one of the things we have to keep in mind is that we have to gauge how much we think the American people have the cognitive ability to financially go ahead and correctly invest their own money. And at the heart of Social Security benefits, that's the part that really is kind of shitty to talk about. It's, can the American people entrust the American people to invest their own money wisely, to have a decent return on investment? Now, we know the government can't be trusted because we know once again, they got their math wrong. They borrowed a bunch of the Social Security Trust Fund money using special interest bonds. The return on investment rate was absolute shit. And now the trust funds are running out and people won't get their full benefits. So we know de facto you cannot trust the federal government to handle our money. And we should not put them in charge of it. That's the reality. But then who do we trust? Part of the problem is many Americans have this halo effect where they believe they have the capacity to intellectually understand investments. And to be fair, a lot more people are more capable of handling their investments now because they have begun the process of watching financial YouTube shows, the people who made it, the people showing people how to do it, etc. So understanding knowledge isn't just acquired through a university now. In fact, to me, you get more proper, usable, practical application information from YouTube channels about how to do investments than you do from universities. There were things with law school that I never learned how to do until I got out, and then I had to know that week how to do them. And they were crucial. They were part of the definitive required steps to be able to live as a lawyer. So I think universities are becoming, in my opinion, to some degree, something that just doesn't provide and hasn't provided. And now we're seeing the light because we can look at other people who work in the field giving direct, immediate updates on how to do investments. So in my opinion, are there going to be successful Pelosi-level investors? Yeah. Are there going to be people who blow it on something and then lose everything? Yeah. I know quite a few people who receive Social Security benefits or receive veteran benefits who get scammed, every 6 months with trying to do some investment, with trying to go ahead and make something financially smart happen. And as a result of that, to be fair, that's a situation where at the end of the day, do we trust people with their own money? Now, when you say it like that, automatically you're like, well, it's their money. They should be able to be trusted with it. We shouldn't take their 12.4 plus Medicare, 15 to 17% of, money each, check that they get. We shouldn't be taking that from them. That's the whole, like, they should have a privatized right to it. Now, things that will transition us potentially to a world like that. Number one, they'll go ahead and create a sovereign trust, which is where they buy companies that make money, run them as a federal government, and then basically take that money and apply it to things that need more money, like Social Security. The problem with that is that, unfortunately, our government is filled with failed attorneys. And those who have kind of like failed to do a regular job, but became community leaders who can make demands on changes and just repeat the same bullet points over and over. And I know what you're thinking. You shouldn't say that, but that's, if we're honest with each other, who are government officials? They're mostly failed attorneys that couldn't actually hack it, do the law that they're supposed to do. And then there's also basically those community leaders who just repeat the same thing over and over and over again. They collect ideas from people, they write them down, they get a lawyer to write out what the change in law would be, and then they just keep pumping that and pumping that and pumping that at meetings until people know their name. That's the reality. So do we trust the federal government to invest our money? Well, we don't right now because they do have our money and they've effed it up. So what do? Well, will a sovereign fund actually fix this whole thing? No, it won't fix it. It might help it a little bit, but it's not going to fix it. Will privatizing Social Security funds fix it, where you have a private right to your benefits, even though they control the benefits? Well, then you could sue them if they don't basically give you the right amount at the right time. However, the kicker with that is the government will just give up and say, we can't afford it. We're just going to give you a settlement. You take the money and go away. That is what I believe will be the transition of what we face, because ultimately the United States government can't find a way to make enough money from the money we pay them. I mean, surely they could find a way to do it, but they're not willing to. I mean, think about it. They've had Social Security funds to learn how to invest them since 1935. Well, technically, that's when it was signed, and then it took a couple more years after that to start the collection process of the taxes. But the point is, that's a really long time. It's been 89 years, going on 90 years. We're talking generations here of people working in our financial system to fix Social Security benefits so that people get their money. It hasn't worked. 1983, the whole thing was going to collapse to some degree. I mean, to me, that was a collapse. They say 2032, 2033 realistically is when we'll see a collapse again. I mean, that's around the corner. I mean, we're 2025. We got 7, 8, 9 years until realistically that thing will come down. So my point to you is, what is the fix? Where do we change things so that we can go ahead and make it better to actually achieve a system that would be more proper for the American people? Yeah, so guys, just a real quick thing. I see Diana said, yeah, so Ed Weir, he has bots on my channel. I take pictures of them and save them on my phone just as proof. But there's bots that will go like, go check out his website. Go check out this URL. Go check out this thing. It is what it is. His channel is younger than mine. Mine does not use any of those techniques for advertising, those phones in China. I don't know if he's using phones in China, but the bottom line is, like, you know, where you have zillions of accounts open and these phones are just viewing and commenting. I don't use that because I have to hold myself up to the standards required by the Florida bar. And as a result of that, I can't use things that violate policies with YouTube and also violate ethical, you know, concerns with collecting subscribers and viewers and things like that. So my channel is going to grow slower than people who do that stuff, but my views are actual people. So that's the reality there. So with that said, I get it. You're going to see stuff like that. You'll see comments that say like, this is BS. He's lying. You're a liar. How could you? Da, da, da. A lot of it is just the spammers, the bots, stuff like that. YouTube is aware of it. We actually have a system that's going to be going through them soon and just removing each one of those comments that just says the same thing over and over again. So, but because a lot of it's just duplicate material being posted multiple times on every single video as the same exact sentence over and over again. So with that said, considering all this, that is what I believe the transition of Social Security benefits will be like in the future, because the fertility issue of not having enough kids and not having those kids work to make money and not needing those kids because we have artificial intelligence in robots, that's all going to change the landscape for this pay to play agenda. Because remember, retirement benefits rely on more people with higher paying jobs paying, you know, for, you know, dollars that are worth less for basically a generation going, you know, backwards in time. That system is not going to work. It's just not going to work in the future. So the pay-to-play programs, the spousal benefits, the retirement benefits, the disability benefits, that's all going to change into likely a universal basic income, where they then do settlements and pay out money to those who are retired, who are about to receive retirement benefits, or who have paid into the program. And then at that point, they'll change it to a UBI plus Medicare for all sort of situation. All right. I hope all is well. Attorney Walter Hnot, the most viewed, clicked on and subscribed to Disability Attorney in America. Please remember to go over to Disability Resolution Law Firm or Disability Resolution Florida and throw up some stars. We always appreciate those. You can throw up whatever star you like, but obviously they get me super psyched in the morning. Yes, we do have, unfortunately, on this channel, other groups that are basically, you know, trying to hurt it, you know, essentially because they'll go ahead and, you know, post things that are negative, or they'll constantly put URLs for other channels that are competing against mine, which I don't really view them as competitors. You know, some of them have reached out to me for guidance legally on things. So, you know, but I guess, I don't know, at some point I may change my view on that because it is getting more aggressive. When it does come to Ed Weir specifically, I think the thing is this: I don't really trust high-level government employees who have essentially retired and then basically try to promote particular agendas over and over and over again. As you know, I'm an independent individual, not a Republican. So when it comes to me, I would like to see both sides win at the things that help American people. Like, that's the reality, because there's no way to just make Democrats win or Republicans win and the American people do better. You need both sides and the good ideas for both sides to make the American people get the most potential benefit. And also, you will have noticed that I put in the thumbnail for this video both Trump and Biden, because I believe those two groups, the Republicans and Democrats, are working in tandem to go ahead and get rid of the thing that costs them as politicians the most money. Like, you ever sit back and think in a larger sense, what is the most costly program that the American government has to pay for, yada, yada, yada? Well, that would be the benefits paid in that they snarkle from, you know, special interest bonds known as Social Security benefits. And they got to pay 7.5 million SSI people from general taxes. So, you know, it's just like, you know, they don't want to have to deal with that. They want a smaller government, or they don't want to basically have to deal with, you know, the aspect of paying out that much money that they could potentially use for themselves. So, you know, the government is constantly trying to protect its way that it can spend less on supporting the American people more. And that's the problem with the major part of our government, is that if you look at it, it's spending less time on custom work towards Americans and more time on how do we make this hyper efficient to not have to deal with any of this other stuff. Now, at the same time, the company will fail. The federal government will fail unless we make it more efficient. The other side is that we're so many trillions in debt that if we don't fix the balanced budget problem, then they won't be able to afford the administrators, the people working at the SSA, to even pay these Social Security benefits. So it's a tricky situation. But again, I don't trust government employees that retire and then do like YouTube stuff, because to me, they're too definitively on one particular agenda and one side. And I have rarely found that those individuals are for the American people. I have more so found that they are good at talking the talk of being for the American people, but ultimately presenting and pushing the idea of what the government ultimately is going for, government ultimately wants. And that's what a politician is. I don't know if you've ever sat back and thought about that. A politician is somebody put in place by the people, hopefully, that basically promotes ideas that build society. Society is the increase of humans, the increase of human work product, and the increase of the governing of those people and work product. So basically, they're promoting the idea of essentially, being somebody who wants to create more government over those people who are working for freedom. It's weird. They're two counter-existing ideas. Building society and freedom are not tied together unless the building society is a war machine that can protect the freedom. But very rarely with governments do we have a war machine that ends up truly protecting our freedoms. It usually ends up restricting our freedoms. So that is kind of the problem we run into. Anyways, no hatred towards any of those other YouTube channels. They can do whatever they want. I just can't use the tricks with all those like phones lined up on fake accounts, constantly doing views and then posting things on other channels. So anyways, I hope you are doing amazingly well. I will catch you a little bit later. Please remember to like and subscribe. And then on Mondays and Thursdays, I go live to answer questions. And then if you want a private session, there's a 1-hour mini contract below. I will catch you a little bit later. You have a wonderful day, and we will go from there. Attorney Walter Hnot, thank you so much, and have a wonderful day. All right, bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.